There is a quote that has outlived its author. "What does not kill me makes me stronger." It has been printed on mugs, echoed in locker rooms, and plastered on social media captions next to selfies and setbacks alike. But for Nietzsche, these were not the words of comfort. They were not a call to perseverance or positivity. They were the bitter truth of a man who had walked through pain so consuming it cracked the structure of his own mind. To understand what Nietzsche meant by these words, one must first strip away their contemporary shell. Nietzsche was not encouraging survival for its own sake, nor was he glorifying pain as some spiritual cleanser. He was diagnosing a process, a transformation, violent and uncertain, where suffering either refines the soul or reduces it to ash. There is no guarantee. The quote is not a promise. It is a gamble. In Twilight of the Idols, where the phrase first appears, Nietzsche was not writing to inspire. He was writing to confront the hypocrisies of his age and to challenge the human impulse to anesthetize pain with easy meaning. He believed that pain could be transformative, yes, but only under one condition, that the individual does not flee from it. Only when suffering is faced consciously, without distraction, without delusion, can it become the fire through which something stronger is forged. But what does it actually mean to face suffering consciously? It means you don't outsource it. You don't numb it with distractions. You don't spiritualize it away or intellectualize it into a concept. You sit with it, raw, uncomfortable, unrehearsed, and allow it to burn through every illusion you've built to protect yourself. This is not the kind of suffering you talk about in therapy once a week and then forget until the next session. It's the kind that follows you into your sleep, that forces you to question your motives, your patterns, your choices, yourself. And most people are not equipped for that. Not because they're weak, but because the world they live in has trained them to escape discomfort at all costs. Nietzsche believed modernity had anesthetized the individual. He saw culture moving away from vitality and into sedation, comfort, convenience, distraction. The very tools we use to manage pain are often the things that stop us from transforming it. We scroll instead of reflect. We medicate instead of confront. We rush to cope instead of choosing to break and rebuild with intent. Pain for Nietzsche was not a glitch in the system. It was the system's mirror. And only by looking into that mirror, without flinching, could one begin to wake up. But here is the truth that rarely survives the quote. Most people do not enter the fire willingly, and even fewer emerge stronger. The majority are shattered by their traumas. They do not transmute them. They bury them, medicate them, talk around them, build entire personalities to escape them. This, Nietzsche would argue, is not strength. It is spiritual stagnation disguised as coping. I once knew a man who lost his only son to a tragic accident. For years he surrounded himself with activity, charity work, endless meetings, constant noise. From the outside it looked like strength. But in quiet moments when no one was watching, he confessed he hadn't allowed himself to feel anything since the funeral. He feared the collapse. Nietzsche would have called it avoidance, not transformation. Nietzsche's own life was a prolonged experiment in pain. Chronically ill, increasingly isolated, betrayed by those closest to him, and misunderstood by the very culture he tried to diagnose. He wrote not as a man who had found peace, but as one who had made meaning out of torment. He once said, "To live is to suffer, to survive is to find some meaning in the suffering." But finding meaning is not the same as passively waiting for it to appear. It is a creative act, violent in its demand, requiring the total participation of one's inner world. He called this type of human the Übermensch, not a superior being in the physical sense, but a creator of values. Someone who, after the death of inherited meaning, the death of God, builds their own foundation from the rubble. But this requires more than optimism. It requires the capacity to hold your suffering in your hands, examine it without flinching, and decide that it will not define you. It will become part of your authorship. Most do not make it that far. Most are crushed under the weight of expectation, guilt, or grief. They inherit values they never chose, chase dreams that were never theirs, and then collapse when life refuses to reward them with peace. And this collapse is not evidence of weakness. It is evidence of the cost of living unconsciously. What Nietzsche offered was not comfort but clarity. His writings do not soothe. They burn. They demand. They strip away false sentiment and leave you standing in front of your pain without a mask. He forces you to ask, have you suffered consciously? Or have you only survived by avoidance? And if your answer is the latter, then the quote does not apply to you. What did not kill you did not make you stronger. It made you quieter, more afraid, less whole. Strength in Nietzsche's philosophy is not resilience in the modern sense. It is not about bouncing back. It is about breaking and then rebuilding, and in that rebuilding, choosing deliberately who you become. It is strength as self-authorship, not inherited courage but earned integrity. This is why Nietzsche's view of strength is often misread, even rejected by modern sensibilities. In today's language, healing is often framed as recovery, as getting back to who you were before the wound, as re-establishing stability. Nietzsche would have rejected that entirely. He didn't believe in restoration. He believed in metamorphosis. That's where his concept of strength diverges from what many therapeutic systems aim for. Therapy at its best creates awareness. It names the pattern. It holds space for the wound. But Nietzsche would argue, awareness is only the first threshold. If you stop there, all you have is a well-documented suffering. Nothing has been authored. Nothing has been redefined. To Nietzsche, you do not just examine your pain, you recreate yourself in response to it. Not in the image of who you were before, but in the image of who you choose to become now, having survived. He called this the will to power, but not as force over others, force over fate. It is not acceptance, it is authorship. This is where Nietzsche parts ways with comfort-based healing. He does not promise relief. He promises confrontation, not to survive pain, but to make it produce something. A new standard, a new code, a new self. Most people are taught to find peace. Nietzsche wanted them to find fire and learn to forge with it. In The Gay Science, Nietzsche writes, "One must still have chaos in oneself to be able to give birth to a dancing star. But this chaos must be held, not surrendered to. Most people either repress it or become consumed by it. To navigate chaos without becoming its victim, that is strength." That is what he meant. So when we repeat the quote, "What does not kill me makes me stronger," we must ask, are we repeating it because it sounds powerful or because we have lived its truth? For Nietzsche, the question was not rhetorical. It was existential. He knew that pain could be the birthplace of transformation. But he also knew it could be the birthplace of lifelong numbness, bitterness, and resignation. What matters is not the suffering itself, but what you do with it, what it makes of you. And that is never guaranteed. Suffering can be the soil for strength, but only if you are willing to become your own gardener. If not, it remains just pain, dead weight. Nietzsche does not romanticize this process. He does not pretend that everyone will make it. His tone is often cruel because reality to him was cruel, and yet within that cruelty there was a potential for beauty, for becoming, for transcendence. But only if you are willing to descend first and not lie to yourself along the way. What doesn't kill you can make you stronger, but only if you let it destroy the parts of you that were never real to begin with. Only if you emerge from the fire, not untouched, but remade. So what does it mean to be remade? In Nietzsche's world, it means that your suffering is not just endured, but shaped. Shaped into thought, shaped into vision, shaped into something that can never be given to you by therapy, support, or affirmation, because it is earned through confrontation with the abyss. Nietzsche calls this creative confrontation the will to power, often misunderstood as brute domination. But his true meaning lies elsewhere. The will to power is the internal force that drives a person not just to survive chaos, but to order it, to pull meaning out of madness, to make pain into proof that you were there, that you didn't just look away, that something in you chose to stay awake. The will to power is not for the crowd. It is not democratic. It is not accessible by simply affirming your strength. It is tested, and the test is private. It happens when you're sitting alone with no one watching, staring into the wound that still aches and saying, "This will not be wasted." I knew a woman once, a former addict who had relapsed again and again. No program worked until she sat, stone sober, and wrote down everything her addiction had taken from her. She stared at that list every day, and then, one by one, she started reclaiming them. Her body, her dignity, her voice. She told me it wasn't about recovery. It was about war. Nietzsche would have understood. Most people don't make that vow. They wait. They expect healing to arrive. They pray for understanding. They look to others to validate their pain. But Nietzsche's path is not collective. It is solitary. And the danger of solitude is that there is no map, no guaranteed outcome. Only the terrifying freedom to shape yourself or disintegrate. This is why Nietzsche often reads as cruel, because he does not offer you shelter. He offers you a mirror. And if you flinch, you are not ready. To be stronger, truly stronger, does not mean to be harder. It does not mean you are unaffected, stoic, or unbreakable. It means you've broken and used the break as a tool. It means you've felt grief, rage, humiliation, despair, and instead of turning those feelings into blame or bitterness, you've turned them into structure, into awareness, into the foundation of a life you no longer borrow from others. That is the forge. That is the fire. And most never enter it. The modern world encourages avoidance. We are trained to numb, distract, bypass. Nietzsche saw this as cultural decay, the loss of vitality in the individual, the loss of truth. Because to deny pain is to deny one's potential, not the potential for happiness, the potential for authorship. You don't get to choose if you suffer, but you choose what your suffering becomes. And for Nietzsche, that choice is the only one that matters. Nietzsche's warning was clear. Most people survive, but they do not live. They carry pain like a wound that never heals, hidden under social smiles and spiritual slogans. They turn suffering into identity and identity into armor. But that armor does not protect. It traps. In surviving without transformation, many build masks. They become the high achiever, the caretaker, the entertainer, the victim, because roles are easier to carry than pain. But Nietzsche would see this as self-betrayal, the refusal to meet yourself as you are without performance. He would ask, who are you without your mask? Without the story? Without your coping identity? This is where most people stop. Not because they are weak, but because they are exhausted. Facing pain directly is not just hard, it's terrifying. It means dismantling the very thing that kept you functioning. But Nietzsche insists, if your function is based on denial, it is not life. It is anesthesia. I once worked with a man who spent 20 years as a successful executive, always polished, always composed. After a sudden divorce, he confessed he had no idea who he was without the role. For months he unraveled. But eventually he started painting, something he hadn't done since childhood. He said it made him feel something he hadn't in years. Real. Not strong, just real. And that was the beginning. The Übermensch is not born from comfort. He is born from collapse, but only if he does not cling to the rubble. To be stronger, you must shed the mask, grieve the person you pretended to be, and reassemble yourself from raw, unpolished truth. This is not done once. It is a lifelong cycle. Nietzsche knew this. His journals reflect a mind constantly in revolt, constantly turning inward, constantly doubting and redefining. He never arrived, and maybe that's the point. To be stronger, not once but over and over. To make the will to power not a moment, but a mode of being. Pain does not ask for your permission, but transformation does. That is the difference, and that is where most people stop. Nietzsche's real challenge is not to feel empowered by a quote, but to feel responsible for its meaning. What doesn't kill me makes me stronger is not a comfort phrase. It is a dare. a test of your willingness to face what hurts and refuse to look away. Most people will never do it. Most will wear the mask until it hardens into identity. But for those who do, for those who take the dare and step into the fire, there is something waiting. Not peace, not happiness, but authorship, integrity, and a strength that isn't loud but undeniable. To Nietzsche, the threshold is everything. There is a clear line between the person who carries pain and the one who transforms it. That line is not marked by insight. It is marked by decision. A commitment to confront, reshape, and rebuild instead of suppress, distract, and avoid. Entering the fire means choosing to rewrite your story not as a victim of fate, but as its editor. Nietzsche believed that only those who fully accept their suffering, without complaint or justification, can begin to author a new future. He called this amor fati, the love of fate, not resignation to suffering, but radical ownership of it. Amor fati demands that you stop asking why something happened to you and start asking what it can demand of you. What part of your inner world needs to be broken open and restructured? What comfort must be sacrificed to build conviction? This is not an emotional process. It is existential, a revaluation of all values. You have to question everything you were taught about success, identity, morality, and meaning. Most people cannot handle this. It shakes their world, and it should. Nietzsche believed that inherited values often conceal cowardice. If your beliefs cannot survive examination, they were never yours to begin with. The threshold is not glamorous. It doesn't look powerful from the outside. It looks like isolation, grief, frustration. But Nietzsche insists that this is the birthplace of the authentic self. To become stronger, you must leave behind the version of you that was built to survive. You must create the one who was born to build. This takes time. Suffering does not obey deadlines, but Nietzsche is not asking you to hurry. He is asking you not to lie, not to tell yourself that healing is happening when it isn't, not to claim growth if you're still repeating old patterns. He demands honesty, not progress. And that honesty is the beginning of power. Real power. The kind that is earned in silence and paid for with pieces of yourself. But that path is rare for a reason. It does not guarantee reward. It guarantees exposure. And most people aren't afraid of the pain. They're afraid of what it might reveal if they stop hiding from it. I once met a woman who said she was tired of working on herself. She'd been in therapy for years. She knew her trauma. She could explain it in perfect language. But nothing changed. She kept ending up in the same relationships with the same wounds, triggered by the same fears. I asked her one question. What part of yourself do you still protect, even from your own insight? She went quiet. And then she said, the part that believes none of it should have happened, the part that still wants it undone. Nietzsche would say that's where her transformation stalled. She understood her pain, but she had not yet accepted her authorship. She still hoped for an apology from life, and that hope was killing her. Nietzsche believed that hope in the wrong direction is more dangerous than despair, because it disguises itself as strength while keeping you frozen, waiting for fairness, waiting for healing, waiting for life to correct itself. But life doesn't correct itself. You do, and only when you accept that truth does pain begin to loosen its grip. Not because it's gone, but because you're finally using it. To step into that fire willingly is to become a different kind of human. One who knows that pain is not proof of strength, but that what you do with pain can be. Nietzsche didn't sell hope. He revealed the cost of becoming. The rest is up to you. If this presentation prompted you to reflect on yourself, please like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell so you won't miss our upcoming mental resets. We have an extensive journey ahead, and we are here to guide you as you begin your mindset transformation. Our next video will be Nietzsche on pain, what it's trying to tell you about your life. Your discomfort holds the map to purpose.